Boy Trey Retro underscore GT, also known as Dr. Gary Trey Taylor. And listen, I just want to let y'all know that my self-care sucks. But that's okay, because it sucked so bad at one point in my life that I'm able to notice when I need to do better and take care of my actual self-care. So listen, come with me on this journey, come with me on this episode as we discuss my self-care journey as I was attaining my DSW throughout these last 2 years. What's up, world? It's your boy Trey, Dr. Gary Trey Taylor, licensed clinical social worker, here back for another episode of the G.Taylor Show. I hope that you have an amazing week, an amazing day. I know it's been raining, little thunderstorms here in my area, but nonetheless, it's been a nice, busy, productive Monday, and we want to keep it that way throughout the rest of the week. Listen, like, share, subscribe to the podcast, to the YouTube channel. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and also we should be available not just only on YouTube and the G.Taylor Show, but also all your digital streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we should be on there. And if we're not, please let me know so I can at least get us on there in that space. Listen, we've been back hard on this conversation about my DSW journey, social work, mental health, my research, things like that for the last few weeks. And we want to continue to do that throughout the summer. I appreciate all the love and support that I've been getting across multiple platforms, whether that's YouTube channel, the TikTok, IG, LinkedIn, you name it. We've getting a lot of love and support there. So I continue to appreciate that. Also, I did an episode with the Hip Hop Social Work podcast, my guy, Chris Scott. We always good friends, met during the actual pandemic or pre-pandemic, and really finally met up for the first time last year at the Chicago NASW conference. But we've always kept in contact. We always hop on each other's shows, do different things, and talk about, you know, the different aspects of social work, creativity, sneakers, his trailblazers, the Chiefs, things like that. And so I just did an episode with him last week discussing some of my DSW journey. You want to make sure you go check that out, subscribe to his channel, and also subscribe to his podcast as well, the Hip Hop Social Work podcast, or under Chris Creates Reels as well. And he does a lot of great dope stuff as well in the city of Portland. And we're going to be going out to Portland next summer for the NASW conference. So make sure you check in and tap in with us on that aspect. So, but yeah, realistically, I wanted to come on here and talk about this a little bit. I get a lot of questions about balancing my self-care. And that's another one of those questions that I got a lot of. How do you manage your self-care, balancing these different titles and roles that you've had, you know, in the last 2 years in your DSW program? And is it manageable, right? How do you navigate the papers? How much time is related to, you know, giving yourself to this doctorate program that you decided to do? How are you doing that, still raising your family, being a husband, serving in your church, showing up for your friends, your family, your community, and also having time for yourself? And so I'm going to try to answer that in the shortest way possible, and also talk about different ways on how I manage my self-care. One of the things that I tell people a lot of times when self-care, when you start talking about self-care isn't just about, you know, going on trips and lavish vacations and the spa and things like that when you think about it. But self-care is also setting boundaries with yourself, others, and different things that you are, you know, dealing with. The doctorate degree was probably the first degree I've ever achieved or I was looking to go achieve, that I did not have the pressure of saying my next job or my career trajectory or my, you know, current role is predicated on receiving this degree, right? The MSW, obviously, coming from, you know, a bachelor's in psychology, the MSW was is our terminal degree, and that was also my actual entryway into the profession of social work. So it allowed me substantially to increase my, you know, my actual salary, also get me in the door of different opportunities, and then prepare me for the LCSW and other ventures that have come across my way in that aspect, right? So obviously there's a added pressure on getting the MSW, passing your classes, and making sure that, you know, you get to that next level. What comes with that is the LCSW, passing the LCSW exam, get the clinical license. You can practice independently, do what you want to do in this space, at least in the state of Virginia, right? Same thing with the bachelor's level, right? We're all going to get our bachelor's degree to establish ourselves in whatever profession that we're looking to establish our in. The bachelor's is the first start, unless you go with your associates. You go associates, bachelor's, master's, all the way up to your doctorate, right? And so for those 2 degrees, in my bachelor's level and my master's level, there was the thought of, okay, once I get this degree, then I'm going here, right? And once I get this degree, and then I'm going to this level, right? And so there was always the income aspect attached to that, but then also a trajectory in your career. Now, with this doctorate degree, the only trajectory was the things that I listed in the last episode between PhD and DSW. If you want to go back to that episode and listen to the differences in the things, the doors and opportunities that I talked about that, I'm looking forward to opening up. And then also things I'm looking forward to, being part of my career trajectory. But if you listen to that episode, you know that I was already teaching during the DSW program. And also I had accepted a leadership role as the online coordinator when I was going into my last year of my DSW program. So by no means, I did not need the doctorate degree to get to that other level. But I talk about, possibility of director dean roles, possibility of state and federal, positions that come up, or consulting roles that come up that fit the need of having that doctorate there. So again, go check that episode out and learn about the different ways on how I position myself. Now, so only thing I was, doing at this point in my DSW was just to make sure that, all right, I had my options and my opportunities, right? I knew there's a possibility that maybe salary would come with it, but I was banking on opportunities and other aspects. That was a big weight off my shoulder because most of my time in my collegiate career, my academic career, right, it's always this weight of income in the next job that's going to come with it. And I get this next degree, then I'm going to get this other opportunity. My last 2 degrees, I've always switched jobs, right? And was looking for a new job right then as soon as I graduated. At this point of my DSW, this is the first time where I was like, no, I'm staying in the same job and I'm okay with I'm good and fine with where I'm at in my job currently. And I'm not looking per se for different roles because I feel like I'm in a good space right now. Obviously consulting efforts and different initiatives that I want to do one-offs. I'm really big on the one-offs. I would love to do one-off projects, one-off gigs, working with different agencies or organizations. I keep pitching that because that's something I love to want to do. And I find a lot of purpose and fulfillment in that, not only just teaching and shaping the next generation of social workers and working at a HBCU, but also I find fulfillment in doing one-off projects because there's a closing, there's like an end date, right? And there's a closure, and then you just go boom, 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 do something for a time period, then we move on to the next project. I like that. I know that's not for everybody. So you got to think about that. Do you like some like ongoing projects? Do you like one-off deals? Do you like to just do one thing, have an end date, close it, and move on to the next project? That's me, right? That's why academia does fit me very well. And then also building my business on the side with working with different institutions, organizations also fits very well for my business model and my personality model. So again, that weight was gone. Now, folks ask me, well, okay, understood, makes sense. How much time commitment is it to this program? And I'm gonna be honest with you all, it depends, it varies based on the semester, because the summer semesters I feel like require way more time than my regular fall and spring semesters. But I would say this last fall and spring, I've required a lot of time. I'm talking about, we're probably averaging 20, 25 hours a week, a weekend, just for writing purposes. So again, you're gonna have to attribute it maybe 10 to 25 hours a week. Part-time job pretty much at this point, 10 to 25 hours a week just on reading, doing assignments and catching up. Depending on the weight and how big and large the assignment is, for me, you're going to look at maybe 20, 25 hours on a weekend. If not more, sometimes I've dedicated probably 10 hours a weekend, 10 hours a day from Friday to Sunday, just off of one big paper. And that's probably most of my capstone papers. that I probably attributed a lot of hours and time in that, because I was working. I still had a life. And so like I could get stuff done during the week. But a lot of times, like I had my most downtime was during the weekend, and that's how I had to schedule my time out. And then that pours into, family time, personal time, things like that. So you gotta get that in your mind frame, right? That I'm gonna have to probably put in the time I would be doing for a part-time job and to get my doctorate degree. And is that even feasible for my life right now? At this point where I was at in my life, in my career, in my family's career, and talking to my wife, we were in a good space to do just that. Now, why would I attempt to get a new role in a leadership role in the last final year of my DSW program? Do not ask. Sometimes I'm a little bit off the deep end when it comes to my work. And so nonetheless, we survived. I'm still paying for it a little bit right now as I go back and forth of trying to rest. But again, that's just me. I can't tell everybody to do the things that I've done the way I've done it, because I probably wouldn't have done it. I probably would not do it the same way over again when I go back and look at things. But when I'm locked in and dedicated to doing something, I lock in and dedicate and knock things out. And I think that's one of my qualities that can, that pushes me over to get things done and make me, and achieve different goals very easily. That's also a piece that burns me out quickly. And so that's what I had to recognize. One of the other things that I did do for this degree as well, that I didn't do for my other two, was that I did give myself the option to quit, right? And I know we don't like quitting. I know we don't like walking away, even though I'm seeing better conversations about that. But I gave myself the option to quit. I had a lot of options, actually, where it was a 2-year program. I wanted to be done in 2 years. They had the option for a 2.5 year, and they even offered it to you once you got accepted. When they created the 2.5 year program, they said, hey, if you want to start, a little bit later, come in next semester, give yourself time to prepare, you can do that. It's just be 2.5 years. Or if you want, you can also do the part-time program. And they also reassured us that if anytime throughout the period of time frame through the fall, spring, summer semester, because we went summer, fall, spring. So I gave up 2 of my summers too. You could always drop down to part-time. So that was always an option. There was never an option where you couldn't go back and forth if something came up, so they wanted to see you succeed. So and then with all of that and those options, I also gave myself the option to quit, because I was not going to allow this degree to affect my mental and physical health, and spiritual health. And so my last 2 degrees, they were stressful. I think I talked about it a few episodes way back, that I was definitely dealing with depression during my master's program, but I fought through it, which you shouldn't do at times if you know that. But I wasn't aware. I didn't know that was depression at the time. It was masked in overworking, and that is how I coped in order to make myself feel better. Was like, we gotta get this degree, we gotta work towards this degree. Once we get the degree right, then we're gonna go to the next level, kind of like what I said earlier. My bachelor's degree, I was dealing with depression probably from junior year through senior year, with the loss of dealing with my parents' divorce, and then my own personal things that I was going through. So I've been dealing with depression on and off, not major depression, but just depressive episodes a lot through my collegiate years. And knowing that, right, I told myself, like, yo, Trey, if it gets to a point where it gets too much and it's weighing on your family too much and weighing on everybody, but mostly weighing on you, you're going to quit and you're going to walk away from it. Now, granted, it's going to be hard for me to walk away from if I know that I finished the first year and I got this last year done, or I finished this 1 semester and only got 2 semesters. It's going to be very hard for me to walk away from it. I'll be honest with you, I know myself. However, I gave myself that option. And that's very important, because I almost did want to quit last spring. And I talked about that, the grief and loss of my cousin, my close cousin, who, passed away unexpectedly. And, this just really all the stuff that I was talking about in my capstone and my research, and he passed away to just a lot of these different disparities that I highlighted, and it was tough. It was rough, man, to be able to deal with that. And so also there was a death of a student, right, that I had when I was teaching in the spring semester, this past spring semester. I haven't talked about that much out of respect of her family, and I'll continue to keep that, where it's at, the respect of her family, respecting my students. But that was another loss that happened during the spring semester before graduation, and having to navigate that space. So there were opportunities where I almost thought about quitting in those areas, and I figured it out, and I got it together, because I do remember my last spring going into the summer where I really was just kind of in autopilot for the spring semester and the summer semester. So that's kind of the backdrop, right? The kind of backdrop in where I had gave myself permission, right? The understanding of, you have the ability to quit, you have the ability to drop down, you have the ability to, you understand that this isn't about going to our salary, our career is not hinging on this degree. We are just moving through this space to achieve a personal goal, which will also ultimately position you for your future career or your future goals down the line, right? So that was all these different spaces. So that was, and I say all that, and I lay that foundation out first, because that's important for you to understand the intentionality it went into and how I approached this actual program. Now, after that, again, knowing how bad I've been with self-care practices for most of my 20s and getting into my early 30s, I knew myself. I learned myself. I had a lot of conversations with myself, and I was able to pinpoint when different, elements are needed to be addressed, right? My wife always tells me, like, I can't sit still. I always have to be doing something. I always have to be working on something. She's still even concerned that I'm going to do something else after this degree program, which I probably will fill it and do something else, but hopefully it won't be as time consuming as the DSW. But in a way, understanding that you got to know yourself. You got to know yourself. And if you don't know yourself, then that's where some of those things will get exposed, good and bad, throughout the program process. That's still part of your self-care practice, and understanding that. Self-care, you have to understand your limits. You have to understand your capacity, strengths, weaknesses, how far you can take things, and how far you can push yourself, and how far where you need to say, all right, I need to take a step back. I know how far I can push myself. I've pushed myself mentally and physically before. I pushed myself mentally through my graduate program, and I've also, in that same time frame, have developed this ability to work beyond burnout, right? Beyond being tired. Like, I get like a second wind, and I have to be very aware of that, because that's usually where I'm putting myself at risk of getting sick, right? Or putting myself the danger of burnout. I'm also able to work when I'm tired. I understand how to work when I'm tired, but I don't want to engage in that. So one of the things that I did do was that I'm not forcing myself to write if I'm not in the mental space to write. And the program did encourage that. But in order to save myself, and save, like, I pulled maybe one late nighter, maybe like late to like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, maybe once or twice through the 2-year program. But usually I'm cutting it off at 9, or I'll cut it off at 7. So I started setting time limits for myself. There are periods of time where I'm more creative. There are periods of time where I'm more alert, where I like to do work, whether that's podcasting, writing, creating, doing whatever. There are certain periods of the day where I do just that. And I don't try to go past, a certain time frame, because I know after 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I'm not operating fully. I'm in autopilot, and I'm ready for bed. I'm ready to do something else. My son is probably, hounding me. My wife is waiting for me to clock out of social work related activities and come and be a husband and manage the house and have conversations and see what's going on with her. So those are different elements. And so those different hats, different roles matter, right? Again, this is a family kind of degree at this point with everybody, everything they're doing. So again, I set boundaries for myself, y'all. So time limits, time frames. We might be reading for this amount of time. We might be researching for this amount of time. We might be writing for this amount of time, right? Another thing that I did do was take the time to, I had to separate. There's one thing I tell my students. You have to take the time to engage with your research and engage with the literature. You have to give yourself time to brainstorm and figure out where you want to go with your writing. And then you have to take the time to edit what you are writing out and then refining it, right? And that seems like a lot, but you have to be, knowledgeable of that and figuring out how do I want to go about doing that, right? And I have to, and good, again, creating an outline, creating your themes, your topics, articles, you name it. Now, one of the biggest things that didn't cause me that helped with my frustration at times with everything going on was a citation manager, putting all my citations in there, labeling them, and having that mapped out as well. So that was a good piece. But again, time limits, and I learned time limits a lot from my graduate degree, because when we would come off of class, going for class for 6 hours, 9 hours a day or whatever, and then we get to the weekend or we get to our internship and we got to do maybe another 5-8 hours, and we got to get to the weekend, do the process recording. I will always make it a point to do the process recording. I will make it a point to do the process recording on a Sunday, and usually, especially during the fall when it was football season, I would strategically do my process recording, watch my football games, and then prepare for the next week, right? So I've always kept that process in place for myself because I was able to have a Sunday to Sunday routine. And my body was actually, muscle memory in a sense, right? It kind of came right back once I got into the doctorate program of, all right, Sunday we doing this. And then, what I'm saying, next week, this week we're doing that. This week we're doing this part of the week, we're doing this. And then we're going into the weekend and we coming out that way. And so again, those time limits were helpful. But again, I didn't engage with the writing if I was not in the space of writing. You have to know when you're good to go with writing. You have to know when you're in that writing space. It's just so helpful. And if you are needing extension or you need them assistance on a deadline on the paper, talk to the professor and ask them, can you get an extension? Most of the times you can. And I think that's actually encouraged versus just not turning something in or, turning in something that isn't doctorate level writing. So again, the time frames. I still try to engage with friends and family and go out and do my regular stuff. So I kept my personal days to myself. I kept my family days to myself as well. And so that continued to stay in the actual routine. When it was time to engage with the studies, I engaged with the studies, right? And everybody knew that. So not only was I on a routine, my whole family was on the same routine, right? Because they knew, okay, well, my kids knew I was writing, or my kids knew I was, doing, meetings with classmates, group work. They knew that was happening. Wife knew that as well. She would move the kids around, or she'd leave the house, or she'd keep them upstairs. I'd be downstairs, you name it. So we built in a routine for the house for the last 2 years, and everybody, kind of caved into it. Now, did those other activities or family activities stop? No, I was on family vacation where I was responding to discussion posts sometimes, or, talking to classmates. I was, we was at games, what I'm saying, for my daughter, or she's at a Girl Scouts, and I was in the corner reading, writing, doing stuff. I took my work with me a lot of times when we were doing those different things. I was still doing speaking engagements, doing workshops, navigating that space. And I'll be also, if I'm at a hotel, I'm out the state doing a speaking engagement. Guess what I was doing probably on the side? Responding to discussion posts, making sure that my stuff was together. And you kind of embed it into your actual scheduling. it's not that you make your life fit around the program, but you make the program fit around your life. And that is where I kind of centered everything. I still took the opportunity to engage in self-care, things that I like to do, my personal hobbies. And so, again, I got back into basketball later on in the end. I was back into basketball early, but I had got an injury, so I had to take a step away from it. And then I bought my PS5. My PS5 was my break between social work student and regular Trey, right? I like video games. I do. That's a give me a break from reality. And I bought strategic games. So I had college football, 24 or 25 when it came out. 25, I believe. I think that's when. Oh, I started 24. Yeah, no, I had bought college football game, the new one that just came out in 24. I think I had to check that because I got to remember where I think it's on the 25. 25. Sorry. Yes. College football 25 came out 24 next following year. Yeah. And so I bought that and, I bought, I'd like to do like a lot of first person shooter games because there's a storyline attached. So I like to do that stuff. And so, bought 2K, of course, just kind of standard and, things like that. And that was my way to break up my social work. Cause right, again, social work student, teaching, still doing consulting and speaking in keynotes, workshops, and all. And then my duties were rising as a professor. And so I was doing social work 24/7. I still do social work 24/7, but I was engaging in social work so much from an academic perspective. I was still doing clinical supervision that I had to break it up with something. And there's some days I couldn't get to the basketball court. I couldn't get to like working on my car, stuff like that, because I was trying to make things, shake, make sure everybody was good. And so my PS5, right, was an opportunity for me to escape. I won't say escape of reality, but escape the social work hat, right? So I can leave my social work, I take my social work hat off and say, we're done for the evening, right? Again, I had that time frame that I shut it off. Depending on what time of the day it was, and the time frame I shut it off. And, everybody was on a schedule with me. And then I was like, I got my own time, right? I need my time to decompress. My time to decompress from all these things, social work. Because I vividly remember one time I didn't take time to decompress and I was doing a literature review in my head while I was sleeping. I lied to you all not. It was wow, because I was so entrenched in the research and writing and putting stuff together that I could really feel my mind still working on a literature review during sleep. It was wild. So again, the PS5, right? Although mundane, maybe can be considered childish. I was able to, really take that as an opportunity to build in with my self-care to take off my social work hat. And my PS5 will allow me to, my brain to come down a little bit, focus on one thing at a time. Cause I enjoy items and tasks where I can focus on one thing at a time. I did get back into building some model cars. I tried to, and then my son kind of took them all away from me, but that was kind of good to kind of decompress and kind of come down from different things. And, and still did those different things. And so, taking the time to set boundaries, set time limits on tasks, not forcing myself to write if I wasn't in the mind frame to write. That was really big. Having a routine schedule that not only did I follow, but my family and friends would also follow with me to be able to help keep things consistent. And then continuing to engage in personal hobbies, family hobbies, continue to take my work with me wherever I go in a space to make sure that I was always present for my family while still working. And then also like something as continue to engage in personal hobbies such as playing basketball, PS5, video games, things like that to help me balance it all out. I'm a firm believer that you have to have other items, other hobbies, interests, things beyond hats that you wear to balance out academia, your work, social work, you name it. You have to have those items around for you, because if not, you're going to consume yourself with this work, whether that's academia, in the community, mental health, private practice, you name it. So you have to have some things to balance it out. That has nothing to do with social work. I say that all the time. People ask me about your friend group, my friend groups and things like that. And I have social work friends. I have non-social work friends. I have social work friends who are just like me, wear different hats. And I have ones that are not as well. And I have social media friends. I have different communities that I tap in with. And that was important as well, is that, and this is the last point, and I'll let y'all go about y'all day. Tap in with a community, right? I know that everybody doesn't have access to the amount of communities that might be as supportive. There were Facebook groups of the different cohorts. There were past, graduates that I reached out to as well, that I connected with, that was helpful. Again, I have a community of DSWs and PhDs that I leaned on as well. And then again, I had some non-social work homies, some non-DSW, non-PhD friends who keep me grounded, right? And keep me connected to who I am as a person. So I implore you all to have that. One second. Oh, yeah, like I was saying, I implore everybody, man, to find their community, to reach out to former I would say students of the program, uh, ch- check in with them, ask them for, different advice on navigating the program. Like I said, they got Facebook groups. They had a group me as well that was very helpful. But the group me is available for that. And then also, if any point in time where you can, a lot of times when we worked on group projects and we had, text each other, we stayed in that text thread, and we just stayed in that text thread through each semester. And so a lot of us was in the same, what is it? The same track, the leadership track. So we just kind of stayed together with that. So that was helpful as well. So I had a lot of, community related to this degree that I would say that I didn't have, I would say, in my MSW program or my undergraduate, degree, because undergraduate is a lot larger. Sometimes undergraduate, depending on, and I wasn't on campus at undergraduate either, but I feel like MSW, I did have a community there because we had a cohort that was part timers that, and we were kind of in the same track, and we kind of stayed connected with one another. So there was community there. And I still had my friend group community and family and stuff like that. But I feel like for this DSW degree, I mean, I had so much community, so much more community, right? I had, non-social work friends. I had my social work friends. I had friends that was in PhD programs. I had friends up in DSW programs. I had the Facebook community that kept us kind of abreast of everything going on in the program. Had my cohort members from my actual program, and so it was just, and then I had former folks who graduated the program who I could talk to as well. So, I mean, I had a lot of community. So I would say, man, if you need that community, man, reach out to folks, get into the Facebook groups as well. Sometimes it can be a lot of drama in there, but don't kind of feed into that. Just use it as a support piece. Use your group members if you cool with them and everything went smooth. Y'all got an aid. Use them as a actual piece as well to kind of matriculate through the program, and then don't negate the non-social work friends because they are helpful in balancing out the social work aspects of everything. But then also keep some folks who are social work friends who can kind of keep cheering you on. Ones that may have been through the program before. They're going to be super helpful with helping you process that. But again, I really think that I was in a privileged space and a way to, I was set up to be successful in this program. And that also was set up to manage my self-care better, way better, 10 times better than my master's and my undergraduate. Like, because again, I sucked at, taking care of myself the way I should have, especially mentally. And that is where I said, we're not going to have this again in this DSW program. We will quit before we let this thing, take issue with our mental and physical. So I'm happy. I'm happy for that. I'm happy for that my self-care, plan worked out and things were intentional. So I want to bestow the same thing to you if you are deciding on doing this program. It is doable. It is challenging, but it's doable. If you put things in place in order, you should be fine and you should be good to go. Okay. Like, share, subscribe to the podcast, to the G.Taylor Show, to the YouTube channel. We appreciate you. Road to 1,000 subscribers. Please let me know what you think about the episodes. Like, share, and comment. Share with somebody. Tell somebody. At least tell 3 to 5 people about this episode so we can keep this thing moving. And yeah, we're also on all your digital streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, we should be on it. Make sure you go check out the most recent episodes on the channel, and then also go check out the new episode with Hip Hop Social Work Podcast as well, discussing my research around rural mental health and Black men's mental health. Listen, y'all have a great week. Be safe. Hope that your Juneteenth weekend was prosperous and beautiful and Black. So yeah, hope that was good to go. But until next week, well, actually until a few more days, we drop a new episode as well. We'll see you then. And again, man, y'all take care. Peace.